The next fly that I'm going to tie up for you guys is the Bead-head pheasant tail nymph, and for this fly pattern we are going to use a nymph hook. It's a size 10, and just like the last one we are going to thread on a bead to our hook. Now these beads, a lot of them anyway, have a larger hole in the back, kind of recessed out, and then a smaller one in the front. So to thread these on, what you'll do is take your hook point and go through the small hole of the bead, and then after you have that done, we will put it into the vise. Now this one has a few more steps than the Beatus, but to start with, what we will do is take some of our lead-free wire, and we are going to put, I don't know, maybe 8 turns of this. And you can just pinch that off, and then you can take your fingers and go ahead and tighten up the wire on the hook shank here. You take your fingernail and kind of pinch down the ends, and then you can slide that up into the recessed end of the bead here. So once we get to that point, then we can grab our bobbin with our thread, and same thing as we did last time. This time we'll start behind the lead-free wire, but go ahead and put the thread on the hook shank and get it started here. Remember, keep the tag end up at an angle so you can thread that on, and then we'll run it back, just in between the hook point and the barb. Maybe one more turn, 1 or 2. That looks good. Go ahead and trim that off. And the first material that we're going to tie in, we're going to take this pheasant tail center, and we're going to find some good looking barbs on the side of the feather here. We'll go ahead and trim off a section of that, and this is going to form the tail on our Bead-head pheasant tail nymph. So what you'll do, take your feathers and lay it out on the shank of the hook, so from behind the bead to where the hook starts to bend, that's where you're going to measure to, and that'll give you the length of your tail fibers. So once you have that measured out, go ahead and grab back towards the points of the feathers here, the ends, and we'll tie this in. And kind of like when we were doing the stretch cord, a loose wrap will help you to get the feather fibers locked in, and if you do a loose wrap on the first couple, you can adjust it as you're going. So after you have it in place where you want it, we'll go ahead and run this up towards the lead-free wire. And then we can trim that off. Be careful not to snip your thread from your bobbin, otherwise you'll be starting over. So after you have that done, what you can do is take your thread and lock that lead-free wire in place, and then run it back towards your tail. And looks like I have a couple of my fibers that are kind of hanging off to the side of the hook shank here. So you can just take your scissors and trim any of the fibers that maybe fell out of place. So once we are to that point, the next thing that we have to do is take some of this copper wire. This is the small size, and we'll cut off a section of that, and then we are going to tie this in along the side of the hook shank. And something I didn't do in the beginning here that I'm going to do now, that lead-free wire sticks up quite a ways above your hook shank. So what you can do is build yourself a little ramp or a taper here, and that'll help you to, later on when we're laying material on there, it'll help you to run your thread down there. Now again, I am not an expert, and I know it looks a little bit sloppy, but I think the end product will turn out pretty good. So once we get to that point, we'll come back down, and now we're going to tie in another section of the pheasant tail fibers. Now I just trimmed off some more pheasant tail center fibers, and what we are going to do, instead of tying in the ends, we're actually going to tie the tips in this time. So you can take your thread and wrap this down snug on top of the hook shank, and then actually we can run it all the way up to the bead head so it's out of the way. So you have a couple of different options. You can just wrap this by hand if you want to, or you can use your hackle pliers if you want. One thing that tends to help, if you twist the fibers, that will help it to, so you don't get any spots in the fibers where you get like a loop that forms. And then basically we are going to lay this on the hook shank. Going up towards the thorax here. And it looks like they're all going to fall apart on me, so if you need to, unwrap it a couple times. And you can just start over. Once you get to a good stopping point, you can take your thread and lock those fibers into place, and then you can either pull on these, break them off, or you can use your scissors and trim that up. Okay, so now what we'll do, that copper wire that we tied in earlier, now we are going to turn this onto the pheasant tail fibers that we just laid down, but we're going to do it in the opposite direction. So when I was doing the fibers, I was going clockwise. Now we're going to take the copper wire and lay this down the opposite direction. And you don't want it too close together. You're basically just establishing the segments on the abdomen of your nymph. And then we can take our bobbin, and go ahead and tie your copper wire down. And then you can get rid of this little tag in a couple of ways. You can either spin this, and it should just break off. The smaller diameter stuff breaks off pretty easily. Or you can snip it with your scissors. So the last portion, we're getting there. What we're going to do next is take some of our pheasant tail fibers again, and this time we want a pretty good chunk of these barbs. And this is going to do two things for us. The tips are going to become the wing portion of the nymph, and the larger section where we cut it by the quill there, that's going to become the wing casing. So after you get your tips kind of lined up here, we'll go ahead and lay these out. So we'll go ahead and lay these out, and you want to leave a decent portion up towards the bead, because that's going to be your wings. And like I said before, sometimes you got to use a loose wrap to capture those fibers, and you can adjust it on that first turn if you need to. And if you want them a little bit shorter, you can just pull on the back end of those fibers, pull it back towards the hook. So we'll go ahead and cinch that down and run this back towards the abdomen of the fly here. And then we are going to add another type of feather. We'll add some peacock herl into there. So grab 2 or 3 long sections of peacock herl and kind of line up the tips of those feathers, and we will tie that in between what will be the wing casing and the wings. And these peacock herl, they're pretty fragile. If you pull on them too tight as you're twisting around the hook, they will break. I've had that happen before, and it's kind of a pain. If you twist the fibers together, they are a little bit stronger. So what we'll do, we'll take this and wrap the peacock herl around your hook from the wing casing up towards the wings and the bead. And we want the thorax to be larger in comparison to the abdomen, so if you want to bulk it up, run it back the other way, and back towards the bead again. And then you can take your thread, lock that into place, And then you can take your scissors and trim that out of the way. Alright guys, we're almost there. So what we will do is we're going to try to split these fibers in half. Not actually split them in half, but divide them up so we have an even amount on each side. Sometimes you can use your thumb and try to kind of push them off to the side. So after you have the wings kind of split off to the side here, what we will do is take that leftover pheasant tail fiber, the larger end, and we'll lay that down over top of the peacock herl, and that'll become the wing casing for this bead-head pheasant tail nymph. So try to make sure everything is in line. You can pull those wings back if you need to, and then lay a thread wrap over the top. Kind of adjust everything to where you need it to be. And then you can cinch that down. Then we can take our scissors, try to trim this as close as you can to the bead. Now we're pretty much there. So we'll take our whip finisher again, put it on the hook up here towards the front, run the thread towards the hook in the back. You're going to make that triangle, go up towards the bead and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cinch it down, and you can push some of that thread back to kind of clean up the head a little bit. Then we can trim our thread from our bobbin, and if you want to, you can take a dab of this lacquer or clear coat and put a little bit on the bead itself. Then we can take this little tool and kind of push the lacquer down into the strands of your thread, and that'll just help to make sure it doesn't fall apart the first time you use it. Kind of wipe off any of the excess. And also, if you want to, you can take the clear coat here and you can put some on the wing casing, and that really magnifies and kind of highlights the fibers in that pheasant tail. After that, just let it dry and you're ready to fish. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, it's a hobby of mine. I'm by no means an expert. Might not be the best pheasant tail nymph you've ever seen, but I sure enjoy doing it, and it might be something that you guys will want to try out as a new hobby for yourself. So once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys next time.